evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The date is November 2nd, 2022. The time is 7:32 p.m. This is a public workshop of the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the record, and by submission to all persons entitled. Same is provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Reynolds.
Here.
Councilman Vagianos.
Here.
And Mayor Knudsen.
Here. Is your microphone on?
Yes.
Oh, is your microphone?
Yeah, I just missed them.
Okay. Okay, very good. Please join us for the flag salute. Please join us in a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation and for all of our first responders. Thank you. I just want to confirm, I know we've had some technical difficulties, so can we just confirm that we are properly broadcast? Appreciate everyone's patience, but we've had some technical difficulties with YouTube broadcasting on an auto switch, so we just want to make sure that everything is properly. Oh, sorry, Rourke. We just had last week, actually a couple of times now, we've had some technical difficulties with YouTube on an auto switch where it starts, so we just want to make sure we're properly broadcast. We're good? Yes. Very good. Okay, good. Okay. With that, we're going to go to public comments. Before we begin, we're just going to remind everyone that we do have an ordinance referring to the decorum. No person shall address any remark or question to any specific council member, nor shall any person be permitted to address the chair while a motion is pending. We ask that all comments be appropriate and pursuant to the proper code. So, public comment, name and address for the record.
And Susan, forgive me for just a moment. I want to say so passionately how much I want everyone to come up and speak their minds forcefully, but with respect. And so let's always remember, we're neighbors. We speak in this room with respect to every person. And that goes for the audience, that goes for the dais, that goes for everybody. So thank you all.
I'm intrigued by your comment about appropriate comments. Anyway, Rourke Halaby, excuse me, 1 Franklin Avenue. Parking in the CBD. The situation in the CBD is unsustainable. We compare so badly to Westwood and Summit, both with vital CBDs. One reason is the debt obligation on the garage that forces us to charge $1.25 per hour for parking, an amount that is untenable. It is driving people away from Ridgewood. Why $1.25 per hour? I blame the two of you, Lorraine Reynolds and Susan Knudsen, who fought the older design tooth and nail. We ended up with a smaller garage at a higher cost.
Point of order. Please don't use people's names. You can address the council in general.
So how do I address...
If you recall, as I said last week, the decorum is the issue in the way that you address. You are allowed to make a comment or criticize an individual about a vote or anything like that, but it's your decorum, the way you present it, the respect that you must show, as Paul stated and as Susan read out. So you can identify people if they took a vote, but you can't
Speak respectfully to one another. That's all we're asking. Go ahead, Rory.
Okay.
Just continue.
I'll withdraw my...
Yeah, but you should withdraw, and with an apology, frankly.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry I took up your time.
Yeah.
Let's give him more time. Thank you for the correction.
And when you talk about respectfully, I never called any one of you a liar which is one thing that you people have called me. Okay?
Please, let's go on. Let's go ahead. with
Okay,
the-
so let me start from scratch. Okay? A lot of time has been wasted for nothing.
That was my fault.
Okay.
I
All right,
apologize.
we're going to reset. Just
You got
take
3
a deep
minutes.
breath, and we're all going to just start again. We're just going to be nice. So we're just going to be respectful.
You were
that's all.
respectful.
We're good. We're good.
I am highly respectful.
Okay.
I define respect. Okay?
All right.
This is, I cannot say the same thing about many of you on the dais.
Well, now we're
right.
beginning to get into the area.
Okay,
that the
now
quorum's
don't
about.
start telling me what to say or what to do.
All right.
I am
Now
not
I'm
Okay,
going to
let me
call
start from scratch.
Point of order,
Let me
please.
start from, and don't give me a point of order. I'm going to give you a point of
I
order.
just want you to take a time out, just 1 second.
Don't
and-
time me out.
All
Let
right,
me
I'm
start
not-
from
I
scratch.
don't mean like literally.
Let me
like
start from scratch.
Okay,
Please.
go ahead. Start again. It's all good.
Start with the meter from scratch.
Okay.
Parking in the CBD. The situation in the CBD is unsustainable. We compare so badly to Westwood and Summit, both with vital CBDs. One reason is a debt obligation on the garage that forces us to charge $1.25 per hour for parking, an amount that is untenable. It is driving people away from Bridgewood. Why $1.25? I blame two of you, Lorraine Reynolds and Susan Knudsen, who fought the older design tooth and nail. We ended up with a smaller garage at a higher cost, $60,000 per space versus $35,000. And the completion of the garage was delayed by some 5 years, and do not blame COVID. Plus, the design of the old garage was much more in keeping with Ridgewood's architecture. Now, as far as Shedler, the Knudsen re-election website has a posting, "Keep calm, Shedler Park is on budget and on schedule." Madam, do you have any idea what a budget is and what a schedule is? I don't think you do, because we do not have a budget, we do not have a schedule. So we are not on budget and on schedule. If you have them, please make them available. Now, development and overdevelopment. In a scare tactic, the Knudsen campaign is working very hard trying to scare the voters with tales of overdevelopment. What developments? Could you provide us with a list? Or is the list another secret? Keep on saying, oh, development. What developments? I don't hear of any developments. Now, merchant's petition. I have opened the petition that Susan Knudsen says she has seen, and Lorraine Reynolds says confirmed its existence. As far as I'm concerned, if two of our elected officials have seen it, it is a public document and should be made public. Now, the rationale for keeping it secret because of death threats received by merchants is unadulterated malarkey. I could use another word, but that would really be something I should not use. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? No takers? Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. Just as a reminder, I believe that I was not part of a petition for the garage, but I believe there was a vote that happened, and the people voted the bond down. So I think that was a result of democracy, which is a good thing. And I believe that the financials for Shedler are posted on the village website, and I stand by my position that it is on budget and on schedule. I'm sorry, the financials are posted on the village website, so we appreciate that. In any event, let's go on to the manager's report.
Okay. I just want to remind everyone the general election will be held November 8th. Polls are open 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sample ballots have been mailed out to all registered voters. They do list the polling place where you go to vote. If you do have any questions, please call the village clerk's office at 201-670-5500, extension 2205. Early voting is available through November 6th in various locations throughout Bergen County, and Ridgewood residents may vote early in any of these locations. Refer, please, to my most recent e-notice, which gives all of the locations in Bergen County. The annual leaf flyer is in everyone's homes. It is a bright yellow postcard. It states the leaf placement dates for all areas. Unfortunately, the leaves really haven't fallen yet. I'm sure they will all of a sudden fall all at once. So please adhere to those scheduled dates. Our crews come in after those dates. Also, we'll put updated placement dates on the village website once those leaves start falling. Upcoming events, tomorrow, November 3rd, Ridgewood's annual Health and Resource Fair for older adults. It's from 9 a.m. to noon in the Ridgewood Community Center here at Village Hall. Care Coordinator of Bergen County Division of Bergen County presents an introduction to services for older adults and caregivers at 9:15 a.m. The Ridgewood Senior Bus will provide transportation if it is called in at 201-670-5500, extension 2203. November 7th, COVID booster shots will be given. You must pre-register not later than November 4th at 8:30 a.m. November 11th at 11 a.m. at Memorial Park at Van Ness Square, American Legion Post 53 will be hosting a Veterans Day service. All are invited to attend to honor those who have served in the armed forces to protect our freedoms. November 11th, also, all village departments and offices will be closed in observance of Veterans Day. There will be no garbage or recycling pickup on this day, and the recycling center will also be closed. Please check your village calendars as your garbage and recycling pickups may change due to the holiday. November 13th, annual Giving Thanks Ridgewood Elder Dinner. It's in person at the Old Paramus Reformed Church on East Glen Avenue from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I believe my first e-notice on this had the wrong times. The correct times are 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Registration is required by November 4th by calling Recreation at 201-670-5560. As of yesterday, there were 30 spaces left, but it's more than half full. So if you are interested, please do call. The senior bus is also available for transportation. You need to call 201-670-5500, extension 2203. It's finally a chance that all of our older adults can get together and celebrate with an opportunity to share with others while enjoying musical entertainment and a nutritious and delicious home-cooked Thanksgiving dinner. November 19th is a drive-through mobile shredding event at 9 a.m. to 12:30. When the truck is full, it will leave, so I do encourage you to be there earlier in the day so that you don't miss out. Please stay in your vehicle. Documents will be securely shredded, and you place your items for shredding in a paper bag or cardboard box. No plastic bags. The limit is 4 file-sized boxes per vehicle. This is free to all Ridgewood residents and businesses. November 26th, the Ridgewood Guild Winterfest and Small Business Saturday will be held from noon to 3 p.m. December 2nd, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., downtown for the holidays. It will have village trucks on holiday, a pedestrian plaza from East Ridgewood Avenue to Broad Street, music, s'mores in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. Santa will be seen in various locations, and on the west side there'll be more trucks on holiday and also a kids' corner with kids' activities. Village Council upcoming meetings are broadcast live from this room on the village website and Channel 34 on FiOS. Upcoming meetings are next week. November 9th is our public meeting at 8 p.m. The December public meeting is at December 14th at 8 p.m., and the work session in December is December 7th at 7:30 p.m. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Perrin?
Thank you, Mayor. The Chamber of Commerce had its Halloween celebration in Van Ness Square this Saturday. It was a lot of fun, packed with children and families. There was a magician, the great Linguini, and a woman with a parrot, and just hilarious costumes. It was a lot of fun. So thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and that's all I have.
That's it? Okay. Councilman Vagianos.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I met with the Fields Committee yesterday morning at the ungodly hour of 7 a.m., which is when they meet. And the main issue is, of course, always field maintenance and survival, because we have such limited field space. And they're embarking on what is essentially a pilot program this year. I've mentioned it before. They purchased 4 turf blankets that they're going to put over 4 fields. They're going to put them over on Somerville at the south end. They're going to put them on Kenilworth in the middle, the north end of Brookside, and the east end, or the small field at Ben Franklin. And they're designed to help the fields survive the winter. So I ask that everyone utilizing the fields, the adjacent fields, please respect them. They were not inexpensive. And if this works out, they will be purchasing additional blankets in future years. Additionally, Susan, Pam, and I all attended the Blue Star Dinner that was hosted by the American Legion on Friday night. Blue Star Dinner is for Blue Star families, which, as I came to learn, are families that have an active service member. I have to tell you, it was absolutely wonderful. Listening to the stories of where each family member is around the world, the work that they're performing. And at Susan's suggestion, it was a buffet line. And she suggested and said that what she's done in the past, and we all participated, is that we would serve, the council members who were there, would serve the families of those who serve. It was a wonderful experience. I want to thank Susan for that suggestion, and Pam for being there. It was really one of the nicest nights since I've been on the council. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Nice. Councilwoman Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning Board met last night. We adopted 3 resolutions. The first was Bethlehem Evangelical Lutheran Church on 155 Linwood Avenue. They're going to be redoing their parking lot and updating some of their landscaping. The second resolution was a revised resolution for Tasco Enterprises at 315 East Glen Avenue. And the third resolution we adopted was the Village of Ridgewood Master Plan. We also discussed the signage in the HC commercial zone, which will be coming back to council probably next week. Project Pride is going to be downtown on Sunday morning starting at 7:30. We're going to be taking out all of the dead plants in the pots downtown so that they're nice and clean for the winter. We hopefully respect that everyone will respect the empty flower pots all winter, not use them as trash cans or ashtrays. And if anybody wants to help on Sunday morning, please contact me. It'll probably be an hour or 2, depending upon how many volunteers we get. And I just wanted to say a couple of things. I couldn't be more proud for being one of the people that spearheaded the petition to stop the original large garage. I don't know if everybody remembers, but that garage was 18 feet wider than the current one. It would have, Hudson Street is 30 feet wide. It would have narrowed Hudson Street to 18 feet. Currently, we have parking on 2 sides and a one-way. There would have been no street parking and only a one-way. In my opinion, there is never a time where you should narrow a street. It impacts safety tremendously, and I am so happy that that original big garage was defeated. During that time, it was well publicized, and the residents knew that when they voted for a garage, if we got one, the only way we could pay for it was either through raising taxes or raising the meters. It was said by the council at that time that they never wanted to raise taxes to pay for the parking garage, so that it was understood that the way it was going to be paid was through the meters. And that is what has happened. I truly believe if it wasn't for COVID, the garage would be packed every day and we'd have no issues, but it is what it is and we have to deal with it. So just a little walk down memory lane on that. As far as developers go, I can attest there are developers waiting in the wings. When I was elected back in May of 2020, the morning after the results came out, the election was not even certified. I wasn't sworn in. I was getting calls to meet with developers. I mostly laughed because I said, if you knew who I was, you wouldn't be calling me. But I know they are waiting for the next council to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. And so two things. I'm just going to tag onto one thing that Councilwoman Reynolds missed. And this is interesting for me because I have served more than, I think, 13 or 14 years on local land use boards between the zoning board and the planning board. And the one thing that actually was equally significant to the massive structure that narrowed the cartway to, I believe, if you said 18 feet, I'll go with that, 18 feet, was while doing so, we were dumping an additional almost 390 cars into the cartway because the original lot only held for 89, I think it was 79 or 89 parking spaces. So not only were we narrowing the cartway, we were in fact increasing the number of vehicular traffic that would be dumped into that very narrow cartway. It would have been really a traffic nightmare. So that's a great point, too. I'm going to echo Councilman Vaggiano's comments about the Blue Star family dinner. It is always one of the most humbling events we attend, and it's also noteworthy to say, well, we have so many of our residents attend with family members that are serving our nation. In many instances, there are young people newly minted right out of the high school. And it's important that we do that outreach. I have lots of folks that I see there at the Blue Star dinner that I actually referred to the American Legion Post 53, so they have that support network. So if you ever know of anyone who has a young person or any family member serving our nation in any of the military branches, by all means, refer them to the American Legion Post 53 so they know what the resources and support groups are available to help them through that. And finally, I just wanted to point out last week's Village Council meeting, I don't know if everyone realized that I was trying, just like this evening, we've had that technical issue with YouTube where it didn't auto start. And so we're trying to make sure that it is completely broadcast. But what I learned over the course of this past week is that the public comment portion of last week's meeting had been cut out, and the actual YouTube video only started at the point where I say technical difficulties and then respond. So I just want to thank the village manager and Dylan Hansen for fixing that and uploading the correct full public comments to YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back and see last week's public comments, by all means do so. I encourage you to do that. And finally, congratulations and happy anniversary to Ridgewood Fire Department, hence the shirt. 125th anniversary. Congratulations to everyone, and thank you for your service to our community. And with that, we're going to our agenda.
Okay, we have the special public meeting at this time.
Oh, okay, fine. I'll jump right into the special public meeting in a minute. Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn the, suspend our work session.
Motion to suspend work session?
Second?
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Vaggianos,
Yes.
and Knudsen.
Yes. I'm going to call this meeting to order, special public meeting of the Village Council, the Village of Ridgewood, November 2nd, 2022. The time is 7:57 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled. Same is provided by a schedule by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
And Deputy Mayor Perrin,
Here.
Councilwoman Reynolds,
Here.
Councilman Vaggianos,
Here.
Mayor Knudsen.
Here. So now we just have resolutions. All right.
The following resolutions, numbered 22-355 through 22-357, are to be adopted by a consent agenda. with one vote by the Village Council. There is a brief description besides each resolution to be considered on the consent agenda. Each resolution will be read by title only. 22-355, Title 59 approval, professional engineering services for the repair of Kingsbridge Lane pedestrian bridge. 22-356, award professional services contract, professional engineering services for the repair of Kingsbridge Lane pedestrian bridge. 22-357, award contract under state contract 2023 Ford F-350, Traffic and Signal Department. May I have a motion?
So moved.
It's stereo.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Vagianos,
Yes.
and Knutson.
Yes, so with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn a special public meeting.
Motion to adjourn special public meeting.
Second.
Perrin,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Vagianos,
Yes.
and Knutson.
Yes, and with that, we're back to our workshop, and I believe we're going to push up our affordable housing piece.
Correct,
Because we
yes.
have Beth McManus, our special planner, here this evening. So come on up, Beth.
So this is item 11E2.
Two. What was it, Paul?
11.
Affordable housing.
Two. Got it. All right, good. All right. Hello. Is that microphone on?
Little green
It
light.
is now.
All right.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having me. I'm here to talk to you guys about some of the last steps, the most important last step in effectuating your settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. It's a very brief background, although I'm happy to answer any questions. The village entered into a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center in 2018.
Beth, forgive me, could you
Yeah, I'm
get a
not
little
hearing
closer
you.
to the mic?
Oh.
And this way everyone can hear.
Yes. So the village entered into a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center in 2018. And I will say, Ridgewood, along with around 300 other municipalities, either prior to then or since then, entered into a very similar settlement agreement in the sense that it did a couple of things. It identified the village's affordable housing obligation, and it set forth how it is that obligation would be satisfied. One of those items, it addresses the Valley Hospital site. And that's specifically what I'm here to talk to you about today. But more specifically, in 2018, the village executed the settlement agreement. It was subsequently approved by the court, by Superior Court here in Bergen County. They stated, Judge Farrington stated that the settlement agreement is fair to the interests of low and moderate income households, which is essentially the court's approval of the agreement. The village then, through your planning board, actually adopted a housing element and fair share plan that is consistent with the settlement agreement. And that housing element and fair share plan has yet to be approved by the court as part of a final compliance hearing. And one of the things that we need to do before we can get to that final compliance hearing is just simply address some of these outstanding items, the most important of which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. And so we are required to adopt the housing element, which is the master plan policy for affordable housing, and then also put in place several documents, or for the council to take several actions that will implement the settlement terms and the policy set forth in that housing plan. One of them, as I keep saying, addresses this Valley Hospital site. And what the settlement agreement stated was that the village is obligated to plan for the ultimate redevelopment of the Valley Hospital site in such a way that it includes an inclusionary housing project that will provide for not less than 40 affordable housing units. And so what I've done since then is I've declared the site, the Valley Hospital site, as, well, excuse me, I prepared a report that recommended the Valley Hospital site be declared an area in need of redevelopment. We had a public hearing at the planning board. All of you, through this council, adopted a resolution that actually declared the site as an area in need of redevelopment. And then the next step, the planning, is simply this redevelopment plan. And so the redevelopment plan is principally intended to create those 40 affordable housing units and be a tool for gaining compliance and gaining a completion, essentially, of this affordable housing process that we started now several years ago. The redevelopment plan has been crafted in a way to provide control to the council in the event that the site is redeveloped. And there's one very important term in here that I want to go through, and that is that it states that the only time a development can even apply to the planning board for a site plan approval in a way that is consistent with this redevelopment plan, they must be a designated redeveloper. And that designated redeveloper would occur through the village council entering into an agreement with that developer that says, you will be our designated redeveloper subject to these conditions. My recommendation and what's embodied in this report is, or the plan, is that only a developer that provides for a concept plan that the village is comfortable with shall be designated a developer. And so for that reason, this redevelopment plan, although it is 18 pages long, there are additional requirements that could be written. There could be planning. There could be literally a concept plan put in place. But I think what makes sense for all of you is to hold this power and work with a developer that comes forward and massage their concept such that it's to your liking and, of course, is consistent with the redevelopment plan. And so it's for that reason that I say this plan has been crafted to provide for a lot of control and oversight to the village council rather than leaving it up to a developer solely to interpret the terms of the redevelopment plan. So that's point number one that I think is really important and overarching issue. The other point that I want to be really clear about is while this redevelopment plan permits redevelopment of the Valley Hospital site for inclusionary development, it does not eliminate the existing zoning. It does not disrupt the existing H zone, which is really important because that zoning was put in place subsequent to or because of litigation with the hospital now several years ago. And so that zoning remains in place, and instead this redevelopment plan is an option for development. The Valley Hospital may choose to vacate that site, and they may choose to redevelop it or repurpose the buildings consistent with the H zone, or they can redevelop it consistent with this redevelopment plan. What they cannot do, or what any developer cannot do, is take a little bit of the H zone, take a little bit of the redevelopment plan, and combine them for something that would be favorable to only the developer and not the village. The redevelopment plan and the zoning are not intended to work together in that way. These are two separate and distinct options. You can use the H zone for future redevelopment, or you can use the redevelopment plan. So that's the other issue that is, I think, an umbrella issue, a really important issue. Beyond that, the redevelopment plan does, I think, what you might expect in the sense that it sets forth the number of units that can be developed on the site, which is 13 units an acre, and that yields about 200 units. It requires there are 40 affordable housing units so that we have confidence that there's no scenario where the site gets redeveloped without the affordable housing. And then it includes a number of other standards in there to, one, ensure that the affordable housing can actually be achieved on the site, importantly from the perspective of compliance, but also to ensure that the site is going to be developed in a way that mitigates any impact on the surrounding area. And I've done that through items such as, but not limited to, buffers and setbacks. And I think I meant to say this at the outset, but I didn't get there. The permitted uses on the site, as you might imagine, are principally residential. So it permits single-family homes, townhouses, stacked townhouses, as well as multifamily housing. It also permits a couple of other additional uses, which I put in there for good measure, if you will. It includes things like municipal uses, should the village decide to use a portion of the site for a municipal purpose. It also allows for community residences, which are essentially group homes for those with special needs. And so that is a very high-level overview of the redevelopment plan. I am happy to go into as much or as little detail as folks would like this evening.
Okay, go ahead.
It's an excellent report. That was an excellent overview, and I really appreciate it. And I think that I'm personally clear from what it said in the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would assisted living be permitted?
Assisted living is not permitted in the redevelopment plan. However, it is permitted in the H zone.
Gotcha. Okay. I was very glad to see references to sustainable building, green infrastructure, room for consideration of solar roof panels. So thank you very much for thinking ahead on those things, and also for requiring sidewalks on both sides of the streets.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I think that's so important for safety.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really, especially in a town like, or a village like Ridgewood, you guys have so much good community design. It would be a shame to not bring that into this potential redevelopment as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thank you. Very comprehensive. It's excellent, and I feel comfortable should this ever come to be where we're going to use this. It would be a great thing for Ridgewood. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So I'll only add that Beth, Matt, and I have been working on this for, was it 2016, 17, 18? So it's been a lot of years. I am so grateful to both you and Matt. It's been an experience, and it's a beautiful plan. So it's a great redevelopment plan, and I think it achieves, for the village purposes, the controls, the design controls that we desire, and for fair share housing purposes, it checks their box as well. So I think it was a great negotiation and a great settlement. So thank you, and thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and if I may, I just think we've been lucky to have Beth as our planner on this matter all the way through, because the consistency of it and her knowledge and background with it has been a great assistance to the village in this regard. And one last thing, Beth, if you can, there's a few other issues that need to be tied up before we really satisfy everything and go back in before the court for a full hearing, or the final hearing. So maybe you can just explain to the council what we might be looking at in the next couple of months.
I would be happy to. So as I said at the outset, there are a handful of implementation items that are still outstanding that we need to take action on, that the council needs to take action on. So as I said, first and foremost, this redevelopment plan. It is the most important thing that we do between now and compliance. But in addition to that, there are other, they're still important, but admittedly less important items, and they are resolutions for the council to consider. In no particular order, but the first one is adopting a resolution naming the municipal housing liaison. That is a required position in every municipality that deals with affordable housing. It is essentially a contact person. So if I need affordable housing, I would call the municipal housing liaison, and that person really would redirect to the appropriate person to answer that question, or they might be the recipient of mail related to affordable housing, and they would redirect it to the appropriate people. So it's a requirement. It's sort of a hassle, admittedly, but it's important to have that designated person for information purposes. I am also going to ask the council to adopt what's referred to as an affirmative marketing plan, and that is a resolution. All affordable housing units are required to be advertised in a very specific way. You can't just simply list it in the local paper or put it on Craigslist and wait for applicants. Instead, it has to be properly marketed to the multi-county region in certain newspapers. It has to be listed on the Housing Resource Center website, and that is just the first couple of items. There are several other requirements. Every municipality is required to adopt a resolution that says these are the places where affordable housing in our community must be advertised. And so that's what this plan is, resolution. I think I said at the outset, these are all resolutions. I do have one ordinance as well. It's referred to as administrative, affordable housing administrative ordinance, and it is essentially just a regulatory ordinance. Now, the village has adopted one previously. Fair Share Housing Center reviewed it, and they made a handful of changes. They are important to Fair Share Housing Center, but I will say it does not fundamentally alter the way affordable housing is regulated here in Ridgewood. The other thing to understand is it does not change zoning or land use procedures or designations in any way, shape, or form. It just simply says if you have an affordable housing unit, regardless of whether it's zoned, been redeveloped, or previously existed, these are the standards that apply to it. The last couple of items have to do with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The first is referred to as a spending plan, and that is simply an accounting of the funding that is anticipated to be collected in the trust fund between now and the end of third round, which frankly is just a couple of years away, July 2025, and how we propose to expend it. And that's a resolution for adoption. And then the last item, somewhat related to the spending plan, is called a resolution of intent to fund. This is a resolution that just about every municipality engaged in affordable housing is required to adopt. And it simply states that we commit to fund our affordable housing obligation. Now, here in Ridgewood, it's not as significant as, say, those communities that have newly planned 100% affordable housing sites where they might be looking at a subsidy of a couple $1 million. And they have to pledge to fund that couple $1 million. Here, what we're really talking about is funding any rehabilitation program. But it is a required step in order to gain compliance. Municipalities are simply obligated to pass the resolution that says we commit to funding as may be necessary. And so those are the final, that plus the redevelopment plan that I started out with are the final steps that are needed. It's adoption of the redevelopment plan, adoption of the amended Affordable Housing Regulating Ordinance, adoption of the affirmative marketing plan, adoption of the spending plan, and the resolution of intent to fund. I'm not sure if I said the municipal housing liaison resolution, that too. And so that's it sounds like a bit of a long list when I say it out loud, but really we're looking at just a handful of final things. It's really the redevelopment plan is the biggest item. I think the rest of these items really flow directly from the work that you've already done from your housing plan and your settlement agreement.
So when do we need to have all of this done? Because we had the one hearing, I don't even recall how long ago that was, and now we're going to have the I guess, final. So when is what's our timeline?
I would really like, and I think Fair Share and the court would like for this to be done by the end of the year, if that's possible.
So I guess the question is, because we have an ordinance involved, right? So we would have to have that prepared by next week and here early enough that council members can go through it. But I think that
I can send it. I'm looking at it right now. I can send it to you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so if
Please
we
send
get
it to
all
me,
of our-
okay?
Will do.
Thanks.
Yep.
So if we can get all of our ducks in a row, whether it's resolutions or ordinances, I don't know if we can get it all together by next week. I thought, didn't we have a designated?
We do,
liaison
on municipal
first, right?
housing.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
do.
we have.
We
We
do.
already did that, so I don't know if we have to do that again, but why don't we just go through the list and make sure we have everything ready?
Okay.
Matt? Is that-
Right, we will.
Beth, if I could just ask you to send me that in an email, what we need, and we can see what we have. We may have also one of the other ones Matt had mentioned, so, that you had mentioned, he said we may have it. So, and then we can provide you with those, and then we'll know what we need to do. I mean, the main thing is really the ordinance, because the resolution we could do either next week or we could do it in December, but we have to adopt that by December. We need to introduce next week.
Okay,
And
I will.
I think as long as we tell the court that we've introduced it by the end of the year, hopefully it won't be a problem.
But we can't carry it over past December.
Oh, that's right, we can't now.
Right.
So-
So I think if we
Excuse me.
can try to tidy this up and have everything for next week, I think that would be really helpful. I would feel better about it all, for me personally, because we've been doing this so long. And I just had one question, though. Don't we have, what is Piazza role in that right there?
So Piazza and Associates is the affordable housing administrative
Correct.
agent.
Right.
So I do the planning for affordable housing units, and Piazza and Associates
Fine.
does the administration.
Fine, okay, good. Just want to make sure. Okay, good. All right,
Yep.
so if we can get that wrapped, we'd be in a really good place.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Beth, thank you so much for helping us to cross our Ts and dot our Is on this one.
My pleasure. It's what I do.
Okay.
Are there any other questions I can answer?
And
Thank
thanks
you,
for
Beth.
coming up.
My pleasure. All right. I'll see you guys soon then.
Okay.
All right, Take care.
Beth?
Okay, moving on, Ridgewood Water, we have an award of contract for roof repairs at various Ridgewood Water facilities. This is the 5th year of roof repairs. 25 repairs have been done over the last 4 years, And this year, there's an additional 2, which will be at the Linwood and College Well facilities. 3 quotes were obtained. They range from $21,500 to $26,500. The recommendation is for the low quote at $21,500 from American Construction Chimney and Roofing Specialist of Cliffside Park, New Jersey. The money is in the water utility capital budget.
Okay. Any questions, anyone?
The next item is about holiday parking in the Central Business District. The recommendation is to provide free parking to customers on the second and third floors of the Hudson Street Garage on the Saturdays in December leading up to Christmas, which is December 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. And by having it free, hopefully people will use it, and then we'll know where to go after the holidays to park in the garage.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because we're limiting this to 3 hours. If we're trying to get people to come in, I would hope we want them to spend several hours shopping, couple hours dining, like, I don't know, can we not limit it to 3 hours?
Sure, we can do that. That's up to the council.
I would only be concerned that we would wind up with employees parked all day long.
Well,
although
which brings me to my question that I'm sorry, we not
Yeah,
finished?
no, but I agree. I've always said we should allow parking to be longer. I've always felt that way, but go ahead. I'll defer.
Yeah, are the second and third floors, do we have enough data to know how full they are on Saturdays?
The main floor that's usually, the floors that are usually full, my understanding is the 4th floor, because that's where the CBD employees park, and the 1st floor, because that's in and out in 3 hours. I don't know offhand exactly how full the others are. They've been fairly empty in the sense that, not at night, but during the day.
Here, I think we're looking at, the question I'm asking is for the time that we're talking about on Saturdays, which is, of course, the busiest day. And let me tell you my concerns, and I have been saying this for as long as the council has been voting on this, that this does not have, and this may be different, but this has never had the effect that the council has intended, which is to open up spaces for people who come to shop and dine. What happens is, and this is a fact, the word gets out about this, and employees know about it. They get there first, they leave their cars there all day long, and the shoppers and diners that we want to come as a result of this are locked out because they don't get there as early as the employees. So what I would, and I have urged the council in the past, before I was sitting on the council, that we should not do this. Now, we have a different situation. We have a parking garage that is largely empty, and that's why I ask, and I don't know, I see Bob in the audience, I don't know if Bob knows, on Saturdays how full the parking garage is, because if it's relatively full on a Saturday, this will have the opposite effect intended. It is well intentioned, but it always backfires.
So do we want to ask?
We can find out from our PEOs, from, the.
I'm sorry?
We can find out from the parking enforcement officers, so we can find out, and from Sergeant Chuck, so, because of traffic.
That would be great. I would personally appreciate that. Thank you.
So on a typical Saturday, the employees park on the 4th floor.
They do every day.
And they pay for parking.
Right,
Okay,
correct.
so if they can get parking for free and park on the 2nd or 3rd floor, hey, why not? Do the employees, I forget, do they just have a hang tag or do they have a sticker in their car?
They have a sticker and a hang tag,
Okay, so the sticker is not easily removed.
correct.
So if they have a sticker, they can't park on the 2nd or 3rd.
And that's up to the council. In the past, at times, we have allowed the business district employees to park for free, because the thought was then it will free up the other areas where employees might be parking now, such as on the street or in other lots. So, but you could also prohibit employees from parking. It's only if they sign up for the employee parking, though, and have that sticker that you'd know. Like, in other words, you may have an employee who works 6 hours a week, so they never get that sticker, so they may come in and, just park all day, which could happen, certainly.
Yeah, the word gets out on free parking to the employee network very quickly.
Did Pam have a question?
If we're limiting it to 3 hours, I think that's a disincentive to employees. I should also point out that when CBDAC did their field trip a couple weeks ago to Summit in all their lots have a limit of 5 hours, not 3. And, but the first hour is free. I thought that was interesting. I'd like to try this with 3-hour limit or 5-hour limit, either one.
I just wonder, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was only just going to suggest like an elf or someone monitor the garage.
A what?
Monitor the
That would be cute. I
I
nominate
just
Paul.
wonder if it doesn't pay to have somebody there at the garage, kind of, saying, oh, hey, how are you today? Welcome to Ridgewood, and the parking here is free for shoppers, and kind of maybe do something cute, but to make it abundantly clear, and it didn't have to be an elf, I mean, it could have been anybody, but, just abundantly clear that this is the purpose, and then you, by virtue of doing that as something fun and inviting and welcoming, that we then have the opportunity to monitor it as well. So just a thought, I just throw it out there.
Yeah, and I'm just concerned. All of these different machinations are, I'm sure that if we run this by the police department, they're going to say enforcement nightmare of sticker, no sticker, 3 hours, 5 hours. Again, I know what happens. I know from my employees, from all the employees of the businesses that I'm familiar with, they're going to take every space, and it's going to be locked up from that time until later, and they're going to go out and they're going to move their cars because this is what they do. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's that this is what happens. It's the reality. So it is wonderfully intentioned. It never has the desired effect. But if the council chooses to do it, it is not something that I can support.
So what if, again, I was just trying to be like thinking a little outside of the box, what if instead of saying it's free parking we know that the employees are on the street using up those spaces anyway. So what if we were to say, we're going to allocate this to the employees and then free up? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just too complicated. I don't know. I mean, we've always done this. I think we've always done it over at the Cottage Place lot, right?
We've done it often there, yes.
Yeah, we've done it at Cottage Place. We've always done it. It's kind of like a nice welcome to Ridgewood to do your downtown, your shopping, holiday shopping. I don't know the answer, but it's just another thought. I don't know if somebody can process it and think about how to make it work.
I'd like to try it as it's written here.
Did we do this last year?
I think we
did.
did do it at the garage.
We did. But
And
I still say 3 hours. Like, if you're, and especially if we're trying to attract people from the outside, hey, myself and my friend live in Ramsey, let's go to Ridgewood and go shopping for the day and have lunch. You get there at 10 o'clock, shop for a couple hours. Oh, I'm hungry, let's go to lunch. You're well past your 3 hours. And,
Right.
You're like, we either got to move the car or we got to leave. Well, if we're going to the car to move it, we might as well go to the Garden State Plaza. I mean, I just think it's 3 Saturdays. We try and do our best with parking enforcement. If you have an employee sticker, you can't be parking there. And
Yeah, but not all the employees have the stickers.
No, I
okay.
understand
So people are
that.
going to park there.
I do
Okay, so
understand
I
that.
do agree. I agree with Councilwoman Reynolds. I've always felt that our parking for shoppers and diners should be longer. I know when we made it, we went from 2 hours to 3 hours, and even then, I wanted to go to 4 hours. I always felt that 4 hours was the right number to spend the day or and have lunch and do shopping. So I'm good with splitting the 3 to 5 and making it 4. But I kind of agree. I think we should at least give it a shot. And maybe there's a way, Heather, maybe we can come up with a plan, and maybe, we can figure out a way to have somebody monitoring it and saying welcome, and this is just to remind whoever's coming in, it's for shoppers and diners. It's for, people coming into the downtown for business purposes, not employment.
Okay. Okay. So that's how we'll word it.
Okay?
The next one is non-resident parking permits. So in December 2021, we permitted non-residents to buy both premium and non-premium parking permits. It also stated that non-residents could purchase these parking permits after January 15th of the year. It expires this December 31st. So we have to decide now. We have already decided to allow non-residents to continue purchasing premium and non-premium parking permits, but we also have to decide whether or not we're going to hold off on selling them until January 15th, or if they can start buying them when we sell it to the residents, which is usually mid-December.
I say sell them all at the same time. And let's sell out.
Did we sell to the maximum number of residents for
No.
last year?
No.
So I would go with all at the same time, too.
I
Okay.
say all the same time. We're
Okay.
good to go.
Okay.
Is that in perpetuity, or is that just until
1 year.
December 31st,
Is that what you want to do?
2023?
That's up to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to just extend it till then?
I would just say up until, because you're going to have a cutoff, it's technically, because they go on sale mid-December, right?
Right.
Right. So we want to say that it should end the end of November so that you can re-up it in November.
Well, it ends in December because the permits
Or
are
whatever.
good.
That's fine. I think
So
we should
you
end-
want to
It should
end
be
it?
1 year.
You want to do it December 31st, 2023? Will it expire?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Got it. All right, Mr. Rooney, I'll have you come up. He's going to go over the third quarter financial update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I sent the three funds quarterly financial statements ending September 30th, 22. I'll do a high overview, and if anybody has any questions, please stop me or wait till the end, whatever you choose. So on the current fund revenues, local revenues are about 87% of what we anticipated, which is very favorable. There's a couple items in here that are timing. They should come in the fourth quarter. Second page, we have state aid, anticipated 1.8. We've realized almost 850,000 to date. We will be talking about best practices in a little bit. That will depend, the balance of payment is dependent upon how the responses are to the best practices. The way we stand right now, we will be getting 100% of our state aid. Under other special items, we've realized approximately 94% of what we've anticipated. Our receipts from delinquent taxes are about 84% of anticipated. Amount to be raised by taxation and public library tax, it's just calculated 75%, but our tax collection percentage is on target. Total revenues anticipated through September's 77%. In the current fund appropriations, there are some items here that are above what we would anticipate at the 75% level. Some of these salary and wage line items are still subject to allocation from other funds for time that is spent. For example, Village Council, which is looking at 81% of their appropriation. The credit for the time that we allocate to other funds hasn't been posted yet, so that's why it's over the 75%. Some of the salary and wage line items are seasonal. Grade and pool's an example, and some are down because we haven't gotten into the snow season yet or the cold weather. But for the overall, it's the general fund appropriations appear to be right on target. There will be a transfer resolution that will be put forward to council at December meeting. That will be needed to move some money around for unexpected expenditures. for items that we may have budgeted for and it didn't come to fruition. So hopefully we'll be in a position to balance all that out by the end of the year. Water utility, our revenues are right on target, 74% of what we anticipated. We do have some billings that were scheduled to go out in this quarter, so hopefully we'll get in excess of where we need to be. PFAS treatment line item, that's the surcharge that we put onto the water bills to cover future debt service payments for PFAS. On the appropriation side, for water, we're a little bit above what we would expect at this time of year, and that's primarily in the capital improvement, capital outlay. There's funds in there that are encumbered for projects that most likely will not be completely spent by the end of the year, but we do ask the water department to anticipate what their needs are and reserve the money, but I don't see an issue with that. Parking revenues appear to be on target, although still less than what we anticipated a few years ago. We should have no problem in getting to the level that we need this year to keep the budget balanced, and hopefully the revenue stream will surpass what we anticipate, so we'll have some room to work with for next year's parking budget. And the parking totals 71% for the appropriations spend. A couple of items here that are higher than what we would anticipate this time. They too are subject to allocation. For example, some of our PEOs do work for the police department in certain events. Their overtime may not have been credited back here and charged over to the police. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Okay, anyone questions?
No. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. The next one is the cancellation of general capital ordinance balances that are completed or have changed in scope. They can then be reappropriated to fund future capital projects or used to pay down debt. All of these are going through a review by the various department heads to make sure that they do not have a need for any of these ordinance balances still. If they do not, then they will be canceled. So all I'm telling you is this is a draft. There may be some removed. However, I think the majority of them will stay.
Anyone have questions on this? No?
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, great. The next
Thank you.
item is awarding a contract for the Spatial Data Logic license renewal. This allows the continued use of the SDL program for the next year and includes a past due amount. And the reason there was a past due amount is because on the invoice, the correct amount was there. Unfortunately, on the resolution, it was $500 less for some reason, and that was not caught at the time the resolution was adopted. And so SDL has agreed to have us put that on to this year's resolution with the extra $500. So this way we'll have our past due amount paid as well as for this year. The next item is purchase of equipment and service for police vehicles. Hold on one second. So this is awarding a contract under state contract to East Coast Customs of Flemington, New Jersey, to purchase, install, and repair police emergency lights, safety equipment, and other equipment that is put into the police cars. We are hoping to take usable equipment out of the retired cars and install them along with the new equipment in at least 5 vehicles this year, including vehicles currently in the fleet that have not been outfitted yet. East Coast Customs provides all equipment that we install, and this is done under state contract, as I said before. Regional Communications used to be our go-to entity to do this, but they have lost some of the car technicians that are able to provide the service. The amount will not exceed $75,000, and funding is in both the capital and operating accounts for the police department. Okay, the next item is awarding a contract for resurfacing of Prospect Street. This is East Ridgewood Avenue to Maple Avenue. The village received bids. There were 7 registered plan holders eligible to bid, and we actually received 6 bids. They range from $414,961.62 to a high of $546,843.94. The low bid was from American Asphalt and Trucking of Newark, New Jersey, with a quote of $414,961.62. They were the successful contractor for this year's paving award. Work of this project is partially funded by a NJDOT municipal aid grant in the amount of $200,000. The remainder of the funds needed are in a capital account.
Anyone, questions?
Yeah, I just have a question. Heather, maybe you can just explain what the process is, like why this has taken so long? Because we got the funding in early 2021, correct, according to these papers. So what takes so long to
It takes
put
time
out
to bid it
bid?
out, and then also the fact that we have to have our staff ready to go and oversee it as well. In this case, it is later in the year, so most likely this won't be done until first thing in the spring of 2023, only because it's getting too cold for the concrete to be poured.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there was no way we could have done.
You know, we do our regular paving, and we do bid that out in usually February or early March. And by doing so, we get pretty good prices because most municipalities do it in April or May and don't start their programs till like July. We usually get started around April. I can ask Mr. Rotosauser why in particular this one took so long. I don't have a definite answer, but I can certainly
Okay, so
find
this will
out
be
more
in the
information.
spring, and then I'm hearing that Linwood, which is a county road, that's also going to be
That has
spring.
to wait because of the fact that PSE&G hadn't finished their work yet on Linwood. So
And then Godwin is also going to be spring?
that I don't know. Franklin's moving along as long as we can
Franklin
get.
should be this year, right?
Yes, it should be this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I actually had one question about Franklin, sorry. Did we have like a little piece of land taking that, am I allowed to talk about that? Oh, actually. Oh, I'm sorry?
I'm not aware of any.
Oh, did we
Any
resolve
land being
that
taken.
tiny little corner piece for Franklin that we need to resolve?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm
Right,
sorry. I
so-
just asked about a little corner piece of Franklin on a curb that we had to deal with. I think we should follow up on that
Okay.
so we don't run into a problem when we're ready to roll with the Franklin upgrades, because that's
Okay.
an important little piece. It's a tiny little piece, but an important one. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
I will check. The next item is snow plows for our new trucks. We have taken delivery of 4 new trucks this year, and we want to integrate them into our snow plowing fleet, so we need to purchase plows. So the purchase will be to FDR Hitches of Hawthorne, New Jersey, not to exceed $31,141.64, and the funding is from the Streets Division capital budget.
Okay. Any questions?
The next item is authorizing the rebid of furnishing, delivering, and maintenance of various equipment for Ridgewood Police, Fire, and Emergency Services Departments. We did go out to bid. We received no bids. This resolution will acknowledge that there were no bids that came in and also to reissue the bid.
Procedurally, when you go out to bid a second time, does it have to be identical to the last time, or can the wording change?
You could change it any time. It's just that if you did have bidders and you go out twice with the same language and it's still not, you don't have enough money or it's too high or, you don't get enough bidders, you can then negotiate with those who bid. So I believe it's going to go out the same. There may have been one section of the bid that perhaps wasn't amenable to our usual bidder, So I don't know, but it could change. If it does change and we still don't get bidders, then, we'd have to really go back and figure out what we could do.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is accepting a gift from the Ridgewood Conservancy for public lands. This year, they restored the garden site along North Broad Street next to the railroad station, most specifically the two areas flanking the concrete stairs. This included the planting of 2 large evergreen cypress trees, several ornamental shrubs, and many pollinator perennials. 2 Keystone Ridge iron benches were purchased and installed on concrete pads. In addition, 2 stone ornamental plant containers on raised pedestals were set into place and planted with seasonal flowers. The redesign of this garden area, pruning removals, as well as the planting and mulching of the entire site was under the direction and supervision of Chris Ramundi of Ramundi Horticulture Group of Hohokus. They worked directly with the staff from Ridgewood Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Conservancy now wishes to gift this new garden and the planter seating area to the village, and the estimate for the project is approximately $19,000. These funds were raised through the Conservancy's fundraising efforts and through their members. So we will accept this as a donation.
It really is a lovely design, and I'm so pleased with the way it's turned out.
Okay. So, yes, thank you to the Conservancy.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It is
I
beautiful.
just had one question. The planters, so that, are they going to be then maintained on a yearly basis from the Conservancy?
I will find out.
Okay.
If not, maybe Project Pride could do it. Maybe.
No, that's why I'm
Okay.
asking.
Oh, for your own purposes? Because then you would, oh, okay.
No, I'm
All right.
just, I don't know under whose,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Whose to-do
It's-
list?
It's beautiful, and thank you, but who's going to keep it up?
And that is from the head of Project Pride, who I want to take a moment to thank both the Ridgewood Conservancy, first of all, for this beautiful project. We need all the civic-minded citizens who take a project under their wing and say, this is what I want to do here, and I want to make it better than it was. And I know that Lorraine does this with her volunteers for Project Pride. These are the things that make me believe that we're going to make everything work in this town because people want to come and just make it a better place. So thank you to everybody involved.
Okay.
All right.
The next item is a rescinding of a former resolution. So Resolution 22-305 was adopted on September 14th of this year. It incorrectly states that the award for the 2022 calendar printing would be awarded to Ridgewood Press. It was actually for the 2023 calendar. So we'll do a new resolution which will rescind this one and replace it with a new corrected resolution.
Okay. No
The-
questions on that, right?
That's an easy one. The next one is about the fact that many of our village offices and village-owned and/or village-operated properties and facilities have documents which are not public documents because they contain confidential information. In order to safeguard this confidential information, we plan to place signs on village-owned and/or village-operated offices, properties, facilities stating restricted area, authorized employees only. A lot of this is kind of implied because of our COVID precautions. However, it's best for us to have signage and to adopt an ordinance to do so, so that this way, if there were some kind of issue, we could have some way to enforce it.
Any questions?
I have a quick question. Heather, was consideration given to, I figured I'd wait for the meeting to bring it up, was consideration given to any areas within Village Hall or any of the village facilities at the different locations about precluding access for safety and I guess confidential reasons, things such as protection against any terroristic threats, things like that. I know
That is
the water
well,
system.
some of the facilities, yes.
Yeah, I know the water system has real serious concerns with regard to that, as does the fire department. And I didn't maybe that's something we can try and add into the
Sure.
ordinance, because I didn't see it there.
Okay.
It sounds a little off-putting, if you were walking down a hallway in Village Hall and every door says authorized personnel only, but I defer to your judgment as to whatever security is needed.
Okay.
Do we already lock file cabinets?
They can be locked, yes. And there are certain ones that are always locked.
Good, okay. And would this preclude, say, a guided tour of the fire department?
Not if you were to have a planned tour through the fire chief or the fire department, then no, it would not preclude that.
Good, okay.
And it wouldn't preclude a tour of Village Hall either. And if someone wanted to take a third grade class into a office, that could be done. It would just be that it would be, because the authorized personnel were with them, that they could then show them and make sure they left as well. So, okay?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thanks. The next one is the review of the best practices worksheet. I'm going to have Mr. Rooney come up again. He worked with us, with me to, we send this out to all of our individual departments to fill out their portions of it. This is an annual worksheet that's sent out to local governments. It's completed by each municipality and then sent into the state. It must be reviewed by the governing body of each municipality, which is what we're doing right now. The number of positive answers determines whether or not the municipality will receive full state aid. And based on our responses this year, the Village of Ridgewood will again be eligible for all of our state aid. They do also ask unscored questions based on recent legislation. So they do, ask questions, I guess, to see where people stand with those types of things. But at this point, this is really just to bring it to your attention, give you a copy of it, and to indicate that it has been discussed with you. I don't know if you had any particular questions on any of the...
Questions, anyone?
I had a couple of questions. So I'm looking at number 17.
Okay.
Are all municipal employees receiving ongoing cybersecurity training in malware detection and such?
At this point, we are not. However, now that we have our new training center, that is a goal for beginning this month, and then hopefully ending by December, and having training weekly in small groups so that offices can still function, but to get people trained.
Good answer.
Okay.
On number 22, are we posting meeting dates, minutes, agendas for the governing body, et cetera? I know that there's been an issue in the past with minutes being posted in a timely fashion, whatever timely means. How current are we on
Have you
minutes?
looked at our minutes lately? They're completely, everything that's been adopted is on the
Excellent.
website.
Excellent. I like the sass in your voice when you answered that. That was what I hoped to hear.
Good.
And let's see. There's a question, number 37, about an anti-nepotism ordinance that we have a policy for.
Right.
The distinction between a policy and an ordinance.
Well, the policy is in the Human Resources Manual. We have never adopted an ordinance per se, but we are guided by the policies within the Human Resources Manual. If the village council feels strongly about it, we could do an ordinance, but we have never done so.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find that any employers, any municipal employers will put in their guidelines or their policies, their employment policies, into an ordinance form. And because the policy, the employment policy actually has a designation into itself. I could certainly check around and see if anybody's done it, but I doubt you're going to find any towns adopting ordinances that basically say the same thing as their employment policy.
Another great answer.
And just as
If I'm right, it's a great answer, but
And just in
Well-
terms of civil service, We also have that component of civil service, which really is ultimately the final say in anything. So
Correct.
it is
Yeah,
civil
I mean, there's a
service.
number of different
We are a
things,
civil
but,
service municipality.
yeah.
And there will be people who are hired, it's just, they try to do it and the policy states that they're not directly supervising. Now, it may end up in a police department or fire department, it may be that there could be, someone who's a higher officer who may be supervising most of the department, but that's okay in the sense that there are others who are also supervising, so.
No,
And again, it's civil service generated.
Right, no, if that's the general practice, I'm good with that. And if Matt's comfortable with that, I'm good with that. I wonder why they would ask the question if that is not if that's not the general practice, so.
I mean, we do have Labor Council. I think a quick call with our Labor Council will
That'd be
straighten
great,
that
just,
out. So that's
just,
well.
just to confirm.
Just to
Terrific.
confirm.
Last question, number 45. We do not have a formal policy to purchase hybrid or alternative fuel vehicles. Might that not be, and I throw this out to the council, might that not be something, as times are changing, that we should take a look at a workshop in the not-too-distant future?
So I think it's something that we could look at, but I think in the past, when we've attempted to contemplate hybrid vehicles, I think we've run into some issues with the type of vehicles and the capacity, the ability. A lot of our vehicles are running, I guess, generators and other, heavy machinery and such. So wherever possible, we've looked at this as an option. But I guess you could adopt a formal policy to say that you should do this whenever it's practical, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what I'm hearing most recently is that if you're looking at EV vehicles, they're not available for purchase.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the other
Well,
thing.
That's one thing.
and that's-
Hybrid's different, of course.
Right.
And that is, of course, that's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to, at some point, I don't know when, it's going to ease up, whether it's in
Yeah.
6 months or 3 years.
With the turkeys. With the turkeys.
Yes.
Green Ridgewood has been looking at this for several months, and speaking with Chris Rudishauser and our chief of police, and and also sanitation. We don't have a really good place for charging. That's one of the problems.
And these are all things that can and will at some point be addressed, because that is where the world is moving. And
Yep.
so my thought is that we should start to take a look at this as a municipality. And I'm not suggesting that next year 25% of our of vehicles we purchase should be EVs, but we got to start thinking about this sooner rather than later. So I would, with the council's agreement, like to put this on a workshop agenda where the engineering department and those people who know a lot more about cars than I do, and trucks and vehicles that we use, can inform us, and we can begin the process. And that's all I'm really looking at right now is we got to start somewhere.
This is also in our master plan.
Yes, it is.
And there you go.
Okay. That was it? Those are all your questions?
That's all my questions.
Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. The next one is placing a hold on demolition on historic homes.
Okay, I told the council that I would report back this week after doing a little bit further research and also talking to Tony Merlino. And in talking to Tony about this, and as you know, he's been in the building department for quite a bit of time here. He doesn't really remember ever getting a permit for demolition of a historic building. All right, so it's not something that happens regularly. It's not something that even happens occasionally. It's something that rarely happens. I looked at the UCC as well. My computer just went. There it is. The UCC, when they speak about historic buildings, they talk about, well, let's just start that when they talk about other buildings and structures, it's demolition permits are prominently placed like all other types of permits. But with regard to historic buildings, the word demolition doesn't appear anywhere in this section. The definition of historic buildings would include not only those that are registered nationally, statewide, even those that have been issued what they call a determination of eligibility by the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places, but they do include buildings that building identified as contributing buildings to the local historic districts, which comes under our purview, but only those buildings which have been certified by the keeper of the National Register as substantially meeting the National Register criteria. So it's kind of a separate designation that the UCC's historic building criteria applies to. So what might mean then is that there may be a building that doesn't fall into the category of a historic building, but be located in one of our historic districts. And again, we're only talking residential because commercial is not involved in this. We haven't seen any, but the question is whether or not there is actually a function that the HPC can play with regard to a review of a demolition permit. So seeing that it doesn't happen often, and seeing that they've got a 20-day window to review any demolition permit that would be applicable to a residential structure that's in the district but doesn't fit the other criteria as a historic building, whether or not there is any function or any help that a demolition permit being reviewed by the HPC would be beneficial to the town. HPC does not have the right to say yes or no to the demolition permit. It can be advisory, but what can it advise other than we don't like it, or we do like it, or you got to take it down in a certain way, or you shouldn't take this down, but you don't have the right to do that. So in my mind, and you could certainly differ, but in my mind, I don't think that giving the HPC a duty and giving the building department an obligation to notify the HPC on these is really going to be a benefit to the town or create any type of a stopgap with regard to the demolition of a non-historic qualified building in one of our historic districts. So you can certainly do it. It presents a little bit of paperwork and timing. You can't delay it. It still has that 20-day period. So working through that is going to create some issues for those on the HPC. It's questionable as to whether or not it falls underneath their statutory authority, which is pretty specific, although it does have a general category that it can take on other advisory functions within the village, but I don't really see it performing a very pragmatic or practical function. But it's certainly something we can do.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to take this back to HPC and share this information with them.
If you want, I can come to the meeting if you want. So
Maybe we'll do that. We'll
Okay.
talk about it. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Matt.
And our last item is authorize the signature for transfer of Barrington Road.
Barrington Road. The council has been dealing with this for quite some time. If you recall, we passed an ordinance where we decided that there is a section of Barrington Road that is unimproved. It has a very, very steep slope and is bordered by two residential properties, which it serves really no public purpose. And we made a decision to vacate the public interest in that section of Barrington Road, which would inure to the benefit of the property owners that basically owned it. When you're in the area of Barrington Road where it hits Upper Boulevard, the village had a right-of-way that was never developed and made into a street. It remained a paper street. We don't have a purpose for it. It's got a very, very steep slope to it. And after consideration, the council had decided that they were going to vacate that. The property owners had to incur all the costs and paperwork with regard to the transfer and the deeding of that portion of Barrington Road that we decided to vacate. They had hired and were working with Dave Rutherford, who's a local attorney in Ridgewood, who unfortunately passed away last year, and were delayed somewhat in terms of that. They've come back. They have another attorney from the village, Joseph Marinello, who is representing them and has presented deeds. I've reviewed the deeds. The deeds are fine. They just need to be signed by the mayor and the manager, and this is a resolution to permit that to occur.
Okay.
I have one question.
Sure.
It actually relates to this, but on the opposite side of Upper Boulevard, that Barrington Road, Paper Street continues. However, the owner, and this was an application that came before the Board of Adjustment, I believe, maybe in 2011, 2010, when the house was built, one house was raised, a new house was built, and then they just paved over everything. Is that another one we should be looking at to vacate? Because they paved over it and are kind of using it to access the driveway. It makes a lot of sense, but technically it's still village property.
If I haven't been there in a bit, but if I'm familiar, if I remember it, it is paved, and the driveway into the house does come off of that paved
Off of
road.
that,
There
correct.
is no direct access on Upper Boulevard.
Right.
There is only driveway access off of that paper road.
So what is that Paper Street now that it was paved and has an access driveway? And I think there's a well pump or pump
Yeah,
house.
there's
there.
some
It's
sort
no,
of stone
yeah, it's no,
building,
it's no
right?
different than the consideration that we have. The concern is, and we would run it through the engineering department, water department, and any other of our utilities, whether or not we have a purpose or a use, a public use for that section.
Right.
And if we don't, it's something that we can consider. If you remember, we were considering another parcel off of Heights, I think, where the property owners, one of the property owners who lived adjacent to the Paper Street, didn't want it.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that they automatically go into the ownership of the adjacent property owners. It gets split. So one of them didn't want it, and so we're kind of stuck in a limbo on that one.
Right.
But we haven't vacated that one as yet. So we could certainly consider that.
Yeah, I just wonder because it's technically it's still village property, but it's been improved by someone else, not the village. So I don't know how that works, but just something to think about.
Okay.
It's a long time.
So
ago.
just a question on the Barrington one. So do the residents who live on either side of it, then their property line changes?
What happens is that we basically remove the right-of-way, and yes, their property boundary changes to the midline of the Paper Street.
Okay, so
Okay.
then their taxes increase.
There is probably an increase in the land value of the property.
Okay.
I think this Barrington Road one is working out so that both adjacent property owners are taking half the street, and then one of those property owners is selling off that half interest to the other adjacent property owner.
Oh,
So you're gonna there's a couple of there's deeds that go on between them, but there's only two deeds that we're worried about with regard to us.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay, all right. What else?
Okay. The next item is the review of next week's public meeting agenda. We have no proclamations. We have no ordinance introduction or public hearings for Ridgewood Water. Resolutions for Ridgewood Water. We have a Title 59 approval and award of contract for roof repairs on various Ridgewood Water facilities. We have authorizing a refund of water overpayment. We have introduction of ordinances, Chapter 190, Land Use and Development, signs in Highway Commercial Zone, amending Chapter 265, Vehicles and Traffic, permit parking for non-residents, also establishing access restrictions to designated Village of Ridgewood-owned, village-operated offices, properties, and facilities. Also, we have the, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. I think. Okay. Sorry. Also, we have the affordable housing ordinance, which we have to introduce. For public hearing, we have management and non-union salary ordinances for 2022 and 2023. We have a bond ordinance for repairs to the water pollution control facility and amending Chapter 145, the fees for the 2023 parking permit fees. Resolutions, we have Title 59 approval and award of contract for resurfacing of Prospect Street. We have award of contract for snowplows for the trucks, award contract under state contract for spatial data logic license renewal, award contract purchase of equipment and service for police vehicles. We're going to talk about the energy consultant. We may be appointing one. Rescind and replace Resolution 22305 for the printing of the village calendar. Authorizing the rebid of furnishing, delivering, and maintenance of various equipment for police, fire, and emergency services. Authorizing the execution of an agreement for the transfer of Barrington Road. Establishing an annual service charge and payment for guarantee bond for Ridgewood Senior Citizen Housing Corporation and guarantee of payment of revenue bonds. Authorizing a refund of a property tax overpayment. Cancel general capital ordinance balances, accepting the donation from the Ridgewood Conservancy for public lands for benches and landscaping on North Broad Street at the Ridgewood train station, authorizing the 2022 holiday parking plan in the Central Business District, and affordable housing resolutions as well, as long as Beth can get them to me in time for this meeting. Did you want anything off of the consent agenda? You want the holiday parking,
yeah.
right? Okay. Any others? Okay.
Okay, we're good?
Yes.
With that, we'll go back to public comment, not to exceed 5 minutes per person. Name and address for the record.
Yeah, Rurik Halaby, 1 Franklin. Why do I do this? I'm not sure sometimes. I love Ridgewood, and I hate this incompetence. I hate this corruption. We deserve better in Ridgewood. Anyway, an easy point to make, free parking. Today we went, now we're using Franklin's Pharmacy in Hohokus, and my wife and I stopped off to have lunch in Hohokus. Free parking, there's always space. The employees do not end up using up the free spaces. It's the same thing with Glenrock, the same thing with what have you. Now, as far as financials, and I take issue, and I have to address Susan because she made the point. Okay? These financials, which I worked on hard, Rurik Halaby, for months and months, if not over a year, to get some reconciliation of what Shedler is costing us. Finally, I got this in October of last year. And I demand an update as of October of this year. Now, instead of lecturing me on decorum, I would lecture the mayor when she says, while updates and information on the house and property have been light and almost non-existent, is this transparency? Because she was blaming me and some other person for the delays. You did. With Frank Del Vecchio. You did, didn't you?
I'm sorry,
I know.
Just
Anyway,
hang on. Just a point of
this
order.
is as
When
far
you
as
go to-
transparency. When Susan Knudsen is quoted in the press as being proud of the fact that updates and information have been non-existent, and we're footing the bill. Okay? Now, I insist, I need to see, as a resident of Ridgewood, what the total cost of Shedler is. Secondly, when I say there is no schedule, does anyone know? And why don't you ask Susan Knudsen, who seems to be deciding on all the decisions as far as Shedler is concerned, when will the berm finish? When will the house finish? When will the field get started? And I don't believe it's going to be done by the spring of next year, okay? Because the plans have not been made, the engineering plans as far as the pertinent structures, et cetera, et cetera. And we expect to be treated with more respect. Now, as far as the garage, I'm sorry, but I have a different recollection from Lorraine. There were like 3 or 4 alternatives for the garage. You maybe have been referring to the first one. The last one, basically, it did not narrow the street, and it was an overhang of 2 feet above the sidewalk. And that would have cost $35,000 a space, not $60,000. And that would have not have been bankrupting the central business district. Now, as far as the Prospect Street, I'm really delighted it's being repatched or repaved. You know, my son who lives in London was visiting us a few months ago, and I took him on a walk around the streets, and he basically shook his head and said, this is third world. I mean, the streets in Ridgewood are horrible. In fact, Chestnut Street, a woman stepped off the curb and broke her ankle when she stepped into a pothole. What the heck is happening? And then we say, oh, we're spending more money than ever on repaving streets. Our streets are miserable. And you can't just count it, you cannot just blame it on the county. Because the county was waiting for us to get the curbs done, right? Now, my last point, one small story. We have a friend of ours who lives on Lincoln Avenue. She was given a $52 ticket in town. She had paid the money and everything else, but she was more than 6 inches away from the curb. She was well within the box. Are you telling me the parking enforcement officer has nothing to do better than raise money for my friend Bob Rooney? This is ridiculous. This woman, our friend who's 75 years old, said, au revoir Ridgewood. From now on, she's going to go, instead of going to Walgreens, she's going to go to CVS in Midland Park. It's an embarrassment. I mean, who's in charge? Who is in charge?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pathetic.
Okay. Anyone else? Public comment?
Good evening. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. First thing I'd like to say, sadly, is I'm somewhat disappointed in the council this evening in that, as you all know, former Mayor Pat Mancuso did pass away. And I'm sorry that that was not mentioned by the council this evening. I would respectfully request that at the public meeting next week, there be some mention made of Pat's contributions to the village. There was a nice obituary that was, I guess, provided by the family that's posted online. Perhaps some of the things that are mentioned in that obituary could be mentioned during the public meeting next week. It is sad, 84 years old, still, in my opinion, too early to go. And I do think it would be appropriate to give him some recognition, and next week's public meeting might be a good time to do that. So, you know, with all due respect, I think you owe him that, regardless of whether you believed in it, whether you sided with him politically or not. He did provide a tremendous service to the community. One comment about something that was on the agenda this evening. I'm a bit concerned about these signs that are going to be put up, employee access only. My perspective is that if you have these confidential records and documents or whatever that the public should not have access to, these should already be behind locked doors with some sort of security, perhaps a card so you know who's going in and out of the room. And I really don't understand the need for this. I think it's going to be an ordinance and these signs to go up. Something was said about the fire department. That's not a place that the public goes anyway. So this kind of boggles my mind. My main concern, however, is that one of these signs is going to appear on a door to an office to prevent people from going in to see someone. Somebody's going to point and say, can't you see the sign on the door? Employees only are allowed in here when there is a reason that the public may need to go into the office. Not saying this is going to happen, but my biggest concern is that one of those signs is going to appear on the clerk's door one day, and nobody is going to be able to get inside the clerk's office. So again, I'm perplexed. All of these records that people aren't supposed to see, that are confidential, that contain private information, should be under lock and key right now, guarded someplace with security. So why all of a sudden the need for the signs? The people shouldn't be going in there anyway. So I don't understand the need for the ordinance and the need for these signs to appear. And as I say, it concerns me that one of these signs is going to go up someday, and it's going to be on somebody's office, and somebody's going to step inside, and the police are going to be called, and it's going to be like, well, what did I do? I came in to see someone. So I would like this whole process rethought, if you can, because it really concerns me that somebody's going to be trying to hide something that should already be hidden and under lock and key that nobody can have access to anyway. So what is the real need for this? What is the genesis of this? What happened that we are now all of a sudden doing this? Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing about Pat next week. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Boyd.
And if I may say, you're absolutely right that we failed to recognize the passing of Pat Mancuso, who was mayor when I first moved to this town 26 years ago. And as you said it, I was just shaking my head because it got away from us. And we will certainly take a moment to recognize his passing next week at the public meeting instead of now, late in the evening. Thank you for pointing that out to us.
Yeah, so, yes, thank you, Boyd, and we were certainly remiss, and Pat was not just the mayor, was a friend, and we know that the last time on earth was very difficult, and so our sincerest condolences to his family, but we will definitely address that next week. Thank you. All right.
Just if I may respond just to Mr. Loving's comments, just briefly, without going into depth, but the ordinance with regard to securing rooms is being recommended by our insurance carriers. So I'll leave it at that for now. I can go into it depth maybe at another time when it comes up, but it's a recommendation from the carriers.
Okay. With that, we'll take a resolution to go into close. Oh, anyone else for public comment? I'm sorry, we're going to close. Ann, anyone? Like the last man saying, okay, sorry. All right, we'll close public comment and take a resolution.
I want to say something before we go into closed session. I just want to, so garage design A was 12 feet over the footprint and narrowed Hudson Street by 18 feet, or 12 feet. So from 30 feet, it reduced it down to 18 feet. There was another design, I think it was called B, which was promised to the residents that it would fit on the footprint of the lot. It did not. It was 5 feet over. So that would have narrowed Hudson Street by 5 feet down to 25 feet. I do not believe there was ever a design that fit on the footprint until Mayor Knudsen was mayor, or at least on the council. Certainly not when, I won't even mention names, but there was never a design that fit on the footprint until Susan and Mike were on the council. And actually, I think it was Mike that had remembered that there was a design from years ago that fit on the footprint. And I think he researched it, brought it out, and we were all like, oh, it's on the footprint.
Yeah.
When
So,
they,
yeah.
that's
It
the
was actually, Mike and I went through our old paperwork from the original, I guess it was a request for proposal. Whatever we did initially when we interviewed everyone downstairs, Mike and I went back to our paperwork, and Mike said, no, there's one that fit, because we kept saying, can't the ramps run at the back end of the property? And he remembered, as we were discussing it, that there was a design that did that, and that's what we went back and looked at. So it was absolutely Mike Seaton. So, because he has a better memory than I do, which is pretty astonishing, because I have a pretty good memory. Anyway, we will take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on November 2nd, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the fourth floor caucus room of Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to personnel, boards and committees, hiring of energy consultant for renewable residential energy aggregation program, and contract negotiations, PBA. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec, and be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?